Hey there, friends. Is it possible that the commercial fishing industry could be what undoes the unconstitutional ATF's more recent run on unconstitutional rulings? First, go check out my friends On Duty CBD. These guys provide legit CBD, not this Chinese stuff that's going to find you in a wooden box somewhere packed with who knows what from China. This stuff's made in Kentucky. More specifically, the University of Kentucky extracts this CBD oil and packages it for On Duty USA. Check them out, On Duty USA. Use my discount code FTATF. Again, use my discount code FTATF for 20% off of your orders at On Duty USA. Check them out, ondutyusa.com. A very odd story coming out of the New Jersey area, and it's challenging Chevron deference. You guys know we've talked about Chevron deference often. It's essentially where the federal government says they are the experts whenever they assign a bureaucratic organization of unelected people to oversee a particular department. DEQ, fishing, obviously, the ATF, they christen those people as experts with no reason. Just because they work there, they're assumed to be experts. More on this.
Bill Bright has been a boat captain for decades, and while he loves to be on the water, the cost can be high. He said that his expenses and fuel for his boat can be about $5,000 a day.
You can ride for a week because these are pelagic fish. They're moving in schools and they're moving all the time. So wherever they were today, they're not tomorrow. But the biggest factor is the riding time looking for these fish.
Back in 2020, the federal government required boat owners to pay for inspectors who join their crew. These inspectors make sure fishing regulations are followed.
They come in and they're at a deficit. They've got they have fuel to pay for, they've got the grub to pay for. Now they want to charge them observer coverage on top of that. So the crew members come in, they make zero, and you've got an observer on board that's making $700 a day.
Now having to bear the brunt of inspector costs, the fishermen are taking their fight to the Supreme Court. And while the case deals with the fishing industry, the impact of the court's opinion could be wide-reaching.
The courts maybe have to do more. And others say no. Congress has handed power to the Food and Drug Administration or to NOAA that does fisheries regulation. And so we should respect Congress handing power to those agencies. So the battle is really who has the job of being the more important interpreter of these laws.
For decades, conservatives in particular have been trying to limit the government's power to impose regulations when a law passed by Congress is vague.
Some people think the Supreme Court's on a demolition mission, right? And that's the critics' view, and others think this is the court restoring balance. But the bottom line is, whatever they're doing, they are changing the law in major fundamental ways.
The federal government says the regulations protect herring populations. Wayne Reichel, the owner and president of Lund's Fisheries, says he wants to protect the herring too. He just thinks the government should pay for the inspectors.
Between fishing and fish processing, I am third generation, and without a healthy stock and a healthy resource, we don't have a future. So we're the biggest conservationists out there. We want to do anything that we can do in collaboration with the government to ensure that we have healthy stocks for us to continue our business and continue using the investments that we build up.
I understand this is a big political thing, but this is not politics to me. This is about what's right. This is about what's right for our fishery. I'm not listening to all that stuff. All I want to do is get what's right for our fishery going forward.
So this seems like it goes a little bit worse than what we see in some cases with the ATF. And it's so typical of the government. They take and they take and they take and they take, and then they get to a point where people finally have enough and they push back because these people have taken too much, rather than just being happy with the stupid little bit of power that they were given by Congress. Now, this all goes back to Congress being a bunch of cowards. Congress does not want to make any kind of real decision, so they punt, and they punt to these bureaucracies. What ends up happening is Congress, who is the legislative branch, meant to make laws, right? They're the ones who truly have the authority out of the Supreme Court, the President, and Congress to actually make law. Supreme Court and the executive branch, the President, have no authority to make any kind of law. But Congress vacates their responsibilities because they're cowards. They want to get reelected. All they care about is getting reelected, and they feel like if they vote one way or the other on a critical issue that is maybe has a little bit of temper in the general public, they feel like they're going to lose a vote on one side or the other, so they punt it. This way they can blame somebody else. This way the federal government, in this case, can blame the fishing oversight people, NOAA, I believe they call them, and of course the Second Amendment rhinos, if you want to call them that, can say, oh, the ATF's at it again. Well, they gave the ATF the power they were supposed to have. So essentially, back to my point, Chevron, and in this case, these types of situations, defeat the whole purpose of having these three branches of government, because it essentially cedes all that power to the executive branch. Because by the legislative branch giving up the power they have to make law and saying we're going to give it to a bureaucracy, well, the executive branch, who is the president, is who assigns that bureaucracy. They're the one who builds that new bureaucracy. The White House controls the ATF. So by the Congress giving up their power and giving it to the ATF, they have essentially indirectly given it back to the White House. So again, the three branches of government are non-existent. There's really only two now. You have the executive and then the Supreme Court, because Congress has omitted themselves in this, again, because they're cowards. Now, why does this matter in the gun community? You may be wondering, why is he talking about fishing stuff? Because Chevron is so big in our industry, and it's a sticking point in so many instances. And this allows, every time there's a court proceeding, they immediately, the courts do, give the ATF expert authority power. In other words, the Chevron deference. They're saying that, oh, well, you know, this is their job, so they must be the experts. Let me explain something. In this, if you want to get away from the gun side of it, in this particular instance with the fishermen, who are the real experts? The person that they're talking about, and just to simplify it really quick, there are monitors that the federal government says these fishing boats have to have on their boats. They take notes. They're basically babysitters. They see what direction the fish are going in, how many are being caught. They probably look at male and female numbers and things like that, mating habits, all that kind of stuff. Probably a bunch of green hippie stuff. So these people are on these boats mandated by the federal government. The federal government decided all of a sudden, it's been a little while since they've done this, that the fishing boats have to pay for their government-paid babysitter to the tune of $700 a day per person. So every single boat that leaves that harbor on that day to go chase fish, and they don't know if they're going to catch fish, they are automatically in the hole from fuel and $700 to pay this person. And I say that because labor is not in the hole yet. The workers on that boat, they don't get paid if they don't catch anything. So even though they are automatically in the hole based on fuel and maybe bait, nets, things like that, materials, they're further in the hole because of the $700 they're paying this babysitter to be on there. Well, I don't care if it was 50 cents a day. Why am I having to foot the bill on a federal agency riding on my boat? I should be the one charging you for the ride. I need to charge you for the space you're taking up on my boat. It may be 1 ounce more of fuel that I'm having to spend to carry your big butt on this boat, but you are costing me money. And I bet he eats some of their food. I bet he drinks some of their water. So he is an expense. The federal government should be paying these people to take these idiots on these boats for them. Now, these people are the experts, right? Who are the real experts? Do you honestly think a person who has never fished, who does not know these waterways, who does not know the, I guess you could say the patterns of the fish, you know what I mean? Who would be the real expert? If you wanted to put one of these free boat riders next to one of the captains of the boat, heck, put him next to one of the deckhands of the boat, and you show me who the real expert is. It's like everything else. The real experts are never heard from. We see, if there's a court case, who are they calling as the expert? This pencil pusher who's riding on the boat for $700. It's not the guy who truly knows fishing patterns, the waterways, where these fish might be migrating to and all that kind of stuff. And the same goes for the ATF. It's the wrong people that are being called the experts. The ATF's not the experts. It's literally the bottom of the barrel diversity hires that they're hiring to put in these ATF positions. You tell me, if the ATF wasn't an us against them kind of organization, which is what they are, clearly, the ATF is hired. Their goal is to make it as hard as possible on FFLs. Meanwhile, they're letting all these other things in Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, giggle switches, Glock switches, whatever you want to call them. That's the hard work. We don't want anything to do with that. Let's go harass FFLs. And then whenever they take us to court, we're the experts. So in other words, we find what's wrong with your books, even though you're the expert. We bring you to court, and we're the expert when it comes down to it. So the courts are at a severe disadvantage when it comes to any kind of a case involving the ATF, because the ATF is kind of like the judge and the jury. They go in there and they say, this is what this person is doing wrong, and we're going to call our expert. This is my homie over here. And they bring him up to the stand. He's an expert. And again, with no qualifications. He knows how to file paperwork. He knows how to take pictures of FFL records. He knows how to make electronic 4473s illegally. They know how to do all these things, but they're truly not experts. So here we go again with the bottom of the barrel being the ones who harass people and are considered the experts when usually everybody else in the room knows more than they do. If we're truly trying to do anything, and I'm not saying the ATF has any good qualities to them, but if we were truly trying to use a government agency like the ATF to accomplish something, whether it would be gun trafficking, stopping that, or whatever, bad FFLs, all the things they claim are happening that really aren't happening, imagine the progress that could be made if the ATF wasn't immediately trained to be adversarial. Imagine if they didn't look at gun owners in the FFL as the enemy, which they do. Now, I'm not talking about the people in Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit. I'm talking about you and I. They see us as the enemy. We have broken no laws. We have done nothing wrong, but we are the bad guys according to them. They are hired in, and they are automatically taught and trained that we are the bad guys and we have probably done something wrong and that they need to find it. I want to state finally that I support these fishermen wholeheartedly. In fact, I'm going to look into seeing another way that we can actually support them as a community, because what they're doing will indirectly help us by defeating Chevron. These fishermen, it's tough what they're doing. They are speaking out and going against these monitors that can make it hard on them. It's just like the ATF. Anytime an FFL has an ATF person come in, look, they probably don't like them. They don't like dealing with them, but they have to be polite and they have to bite their tongues, because the ATF can retaliate, because they do. They're known to do that. They have done that. They're on record for retaliating. If you ruffle one of them's feathers, they're going to come back at you and they will find something. When you have handwritten records, you can find something wrong. And 4473s are generally, in most cases, filled out with a pen and pencil, or a pen and paper, and you can find disparities in there. So the ATF uses that leverage to retaliate against people that aren't nice and don't kiss their butts and all that. This is a big deal. If these fishermen are successful, this case goes to the Supreme Court this week. If they're successful in getting Chevron deference done away with, this is going to have massive ripple effects throughout the gun community. Other organizations too, Department of Environmental agencies and all these other places out there, all the bureaucracies that are hamstringing and handcuffing all of the honest, law-abiding Americans out there. All of these agencies are going to be put at I wouldn't say a disadvantage, but they're not going to have the advantage that they have had thus far with Chevron deference. So my hope is this certainly happens. And I can tell you this much, there's a lot of people quietly watching this. There's a lot of people in the ATF, a lot of anti-gun people who don't want to talk about this because they don't want us talking about this, because they know the ripple effect that this will have if this is overturned and Chevron deference is no longer a thing that the courts allow to pretty much overhaul and handle and disrupt and bully the entire court proceedings whenever it comes to some of these bureaucracies coming into these court proceedings. So I look for this to be a very interesting, I would love to see the text on this. I'd like to see the actual court case if it's somehow another video, but this is going to be pretty interesting. And again, it will have a direct effect on the ATF and gun cases going forward. So keep a close eye on this one, guys. Very, very strange bedfellows here, having the gun community warming up so much to the fishermen. Not that I have anything wrong with fishermen. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and these guys are hardworking people just like most of us. I just never saw the connection between the gun community and the fishing industry. I commend these guys again for what they're doing. I know it's tough. We have their back, and we need to show them that we have their back. I'm going to find a way to communicate to them, and if we can support them in every possible way, because this is tough, and I wish them all the luck in the world.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's over.